Hello and welcome to the Health Confidence Academy. Today I'm really excited to introduce our guest, Rachel Finch. Rachel is a nationally certified licensed professional counselor with a special interest in fitness and nutrition and likes to help her clients achieve their goals when it comes to these endeavors. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We are really excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here.
Why don't you tell us a little bit more about your practice and what you do and what your emphasis is?
Yeah, so I'm a licensed professional counselor. Like you started to mention, formal trainings in synergetic play therapy, brain spotting, mindfulness, yoga, but big background in sports and diet, things like that. So played college sports, I don't know, since age like 6 on. I coached lacrosse and soccer. And then after like post-college, I taught at a gym. I taught strength training classes. I helped with diet and exercise at the gym, teach yoga, and I embed that into my counseling practice as well. So yeah, that's kind of like my
Very
love,
cool.
passion, and yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. What sports did you play in college?
I played soccer in college.
Soccer.
Yeah.
Okay. What position?
Outside midfield.
Okay. Okay. So what kind of issues do you help your patients or your clients deal with?
So mostly the populations I work with, kids, teenagers, and young adults are what my focus areas are. And then anxiety, depression, trauma, stress management, and life transitions are my areas of focus.
Very good. And you mentioned that you integrate some of your nutritional and exercise fitness type knowledge into treatment. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So usually when I see a client for an intake, I'll walk through symptoms of usually anxiety, depression, trauma, whatever that looks like. So the mental health symptoms. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I really have them walk me through their day-to-day life. Like, hey, imagine I'm there with you. I want to know from start to finish what that looks like. So I'm looking for things like, what are they eating? Are they managing their stress? Are they exercising? Things like that. And so I try to get a broad picture of what life looks like. And so what I've found, I see a lot of clients for anxiety and depression, but usually those are underlying symptoms of, like, you know, someone comes in and they're just like, I'm tired all the time, or I don't know how to achieve my goals. Usually anxiety and depression are like embedded somewhere in that. So I started to think, wow, this is really common in the clients that I see. So after I get a daily picture, I help briefly with diet because I'm not a dietitian or anything like that. Because what I notice is if people are eating like heavy carbs or a lot of sugar, it can affect mood. But yeah, anxiety and depression are super common. They make up like really high percentages, 18% for anxiety in the U.S. population, and then over 6% of the population is diagnosed with depression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's growing all the time,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Well, it sounds like you focus on a lot of those quote-unquote small things that wind up being big things when it comes to mental illness.
For sure, because small things usually do turn into big things, and that's usually what I see. Some people will come in and say, I don't know, I'm just, like when I spilled my cup of coffee, I just went off on my husband and started screaming at him, but I don't know why it was the cup of coffee. I'm like, well.
It's never the cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's those little things.
Yeah, and they do. Paying attention to those type of details, some people overlook that, it seems like, and certainly some clinicians can overlook that, and just kind of throw people on medication, for example. But when you really pay attention to those details, like, are you getting enough sleep, for one thing? Are you getting enough exercise? Are you eating right? Sometimes that makes all the difference. It makes a world of difference.
For sure. And so when I look at the daily schedule, I also look at like the morning and evening routines too, which are huge impact if they're waking up, checking emails, doing something really stressful, if they're working until they go to bed. So setting up nice, healthy, relaxing, I call them like rhythms, routines.
So wait a minute. What you're saying is you shouldn't be looking at your phone right before you go to sleep at night? Is that what you're saying?
No, you shouldn't. But how many of us are guilty of it though?
Not me, ever. That would never be me or anyone else that I've ever known. how do you get your clients to get in the right mindset when it comes to wanting to change things in a positive direction, working on their nutrition, working on their fitness? How do you get them, first of all, to make that decision, and then also how to get in the right frame of mind to make it happen?
Yeah. So I think mindset takes commitment, being aware, and sort of like a mindfulness piece as well. But I think it's like our patterns, behaviors, and responses that kind of feed into our mindset, I would say. So we can learn new patterns and like thought patterns, behaviors, and responses. So that's going to set us up to have a better mindset.
So you're not stuck with the mindset you currently have, is what you're saying?
No, you can always change your mindset. Although people do feel stuck, though. They feel like, well, this is how I am. I think it comes from like having a fixed mindset as well, maybe being stubborn. We have these learned thought processes and behaviors and patterns that we get stuck in, right? We've been doing them for years. Mm-hmm. And so it takes work to gradually change those. So I think it's like, do I really want to put in the time and effort? Sometimes it's, I don't even know where to go with it.
So Rachel, one of the things that we've talked about in our brief preparation for this discussion was the concept of resilience or resiliency. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, which I think is huge. So this is a struggle I see in so many clients that I work with. A lot of what I do takes time and effort and work. And so people don't like to hear that. They want some sort of quick fix, or I don't know. It takes work. And so resiliency is a huge piece of it. I think of resiliency as overcoming challenges, hard things, stressful events, and coming out okay from it. There wasn't too much damage to us. We're not ready to give up. I embedded into my practice because my approach is that life is stressful, it can be chaotic. We can't change those things, but just to help people manage and handle themselves in the chaos that goes around us, which resiliency plays into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, resiliency seems to be a key factor in any type of positive change, and then also in developing the right mindset, I would say.
For sure.
Yeah,
totally agree.
Now, let's talk a little bit more about motivation. How do you establish motivation? Where do people find it? I know it's a little bit different for everybody, but talk about how you get your clients to motivate themselves for these type of improvements.
Yeah, so I don't mean to be humorous with this question at all. Motivation's super important. This is just a tough question to answer. Again, something I see a lot with the clients that I work with. What motivates you? It's a challenge, but it doesn't mean that we can't figure it out and overcome it. But why it's tough is that we're humans and we're so individualized that what is motivating for me is different for you and is different for everyone else. So really, I think where mindfulness kind of play into this is that you do some searching within yourself. What are you trying to work towards? What do you like? What do you enjoy? What feels good? Those kinds of things. And then kind of run with it and continue to embed them into your practice and daily routines. And then that will increase motivation.
So a very individualized thing is what you're saying.
Yeah. I can't say like, we should all work towards eating that piece of chocolate on Friday because, I don't know, you might not like chocolate as much as I do.
Well, we could have a whole nother discussion about that. We were my kids and I were ranking our favorite types of candy the other day and what order we put them in, and there was quite a bit of chocolate on there. I'll just say that. But yeah, okay, I see what you're saying, and I think I've seen that in my clinical practice as well. There are an infinite number of reasons that people are motivated one way or the other, and I think they kind of have to feel it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. So I would say instead of forcing yourself, like I mentioned, to continue to do it, things that when we search within ourselves to figure out what feels good, what do we want to work towards, it's going to create a feel good response when we get that. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be more motivating than just forcing yourself to do it. over and over again until
Right.
it becomes habit.
So, yeah, and you've mentioned this quite a few times already, which is have grace with yourself. If you're punitive towards yourself, it's not going to be sustainable.
Right. No. And that, I mean, that's down to like a science-y sort of level, that what it does with like our brains and a cellular level, like our body holds on to those negative thoughts and trauma and things like that.
Okay, Rachel. So now we have our client motivated to make these changes. When it comes to setting expectations, what to expect, what kind of pitfalls can people fall into, and how do they avoid those?
So I see people have too high of expectations usually. Usually that's what I see. So making sure you set yourself up for success with what's achievable for you, what you're going to be able to achieve. That way, again, that feel good feeling when you accomplish it, feels good, you want to do it again. If you say I'm going to work out 6 days a week for an hour each day and you make it 2 days, you're going to feel bad about yourself. You're not going to want to stick it out. So setting achievable, manageable goals. So I often ask my clients, what do you feel like you can achieve within this week? Is it 4 times? Is it just 2? No judgment with whatever it is, but it has to be achievable for you so you can come back and say you did it.
Yeah, and I would imagine that setting expectations that are more realistic helps get you into that positive feedback loop that you were talking about. That's so important in having a effort that's sustainable and something that people can turn into a lifelong practice, as opposed to going to go as hard as I can, work out 4 hours a day, and eat 2 rice cakes a day, and then I'll be on the cover of Men's Health in 2 months, right?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, just some pointers, like mastering just one thing at a time, not comparing what you're doing to what anyone else is doing or the progress you make versus what other people's progress looks like compared to yours. I would recommend not setting time limits on it either. Like, I've got to do this by the end of the month, because our journeys are like usually up and down and not so much linear. There's a couple things to keep in mind for achievable expectations.
Gotcha. Okay, very good. So another thing that we talked about that's an important thing to avoid, in addition to setting expectations that are too lofty or unrealistic, is that people tend to fall into the trap of getting into all or none or black and white type thinking. Can you talk a little bit about that and why it causes additional problems?
Yeah, so that black and white thinking, super toxic. It's just like a all or nothing kind of mindset, which isn't not realistic at all. That's not how life works at all. So it can interfere with our progress. It can affect our eating habits. It can lead to negative perception about ourselves, or even cause perfectionism. Like, we have to look a certain way, or we're trying to achieve these bodybuilder type of looks when really that's maybe not achievable.
Gotcha.
Or a good expectation. So I've mentioned numerous times the self-compassion, patience in the similar category, although not the same thing. People are eager to see results right away. So that's why they go that like all or nothing, or like, I'm going to take on 4 hours of a workout a day. Patience is just knowing that it's a process, kind of going with it. So a lot of this affects our thoughts, our emotions affect all of what we do. And so if I could like draw it out, I would. So your beliefs and thoughts affect your feelings, which affect your actions, which then affect the results. So it comes from like the starting point is our beliefs and our thoughts, which then affect everything else right down the line.
Sort of like a domino effect is what you're saying.
For sure.
So
yeah.
it's having a good foundation is key to success, basically.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, we're going to move off of mindset and talk a little bit about how to control your environment, or I like to call it rigging the game to set yourself up for success. One of the things that we've talked about in an earlier video is things like not having junk food available in your house necessarily, or at least not a bunch of it to where you can just. I've always liked this quote, and I don't know who to attribute it to, but the quote goes, "It's easier to avoid temptation than to resist temptation." And it just seems like a common sense sort of practical thing to if you can avoid having the temptation to do something that you know you don't actually want to do because you've set these goals for yourself, to not even put yourself in that position.
Right. So, yeah, if you have a bag of chocolate, I'm going to go with chocolate because I love chocolate.
Okay,
If you have
we'll stay with chocolate. I'm good with that.
if you have a bag of chocolate there right in the cupboard and you know it's there, trying to just avoid it or tiptoe around it is going to be much harder, like you said, than just not having it in your house, which is in your control. So focusing on what's within your control, super, super important. When we focus on things that are not within our control, it leads to, we don't see the results that we want. It leads to negative emotions like frustration, just a whole bunch of negative things. And so if we can focus on what's within our control, more empowering, we're going to see results. It's just going to lead to much more positive effects.
Mm-hmm. Get you into that positive feedback loop.
Right.
That's going to be a common recurring theme here. Because that's how you establish momentum and that's how you sustain. Because the biggest problem with making any type of healthy lifestyle change is being able to sustain it long term. Most people can go gung-ho and do well for a week, 2 weeks, sometimes even a couple of months, but it's being able to turn it into your lifestyle that really makes people successfil.
Right. So like a small example, if I can share, is like if you go to your doctor says you have high cholesterol and you should change up your lifestyle a little bit. What I see is most people will fixate on what's not within their control. Their doctor, they'll be mad at their doctor, which isn't going to change anything. They're going to be unhappy.
And don't be mad at your doctor, folks. All we want to do is help.
Which, I mean, it's not going to lead to anything. They're going to be angry. They're going to be frustrated. Mm-hmm. It's not going to change the fact that they have high cholesterol. So instead, what they can focus on is their eating habits, what kind of exercise routine and what kind of lifestyle they live, which is going to lead to lowering the cholesterol, happier feelings, more in control of yourself instead of what's not.
Gotcha. So your doctor can't trick you into eating healthy, and then you really can't trick yourself into eating healthy either.
No. Our brains are so complex and they're so smart. We can't trick ourselves into eating a raw piece of broccoli every day saying like, ooh, this is like eating chocolate. It's not.
It is not.
So I think that there's a lot of good options out there, though, that we could genuinely find things that we're going to look forward to and we can like, and we're not forcing or tricking ourselves.
Gotcha. Okay, let's talk also about the concept of having an accountability partner. And you and I have both talked about this, that having an accountability partner is not for everybody, but there are some people who really do seem to respond to that. And can you tell me about the reasons that happens?
Yeah, so a couple different things that I think of with an accountability partner. You guys are in it together, whether it be a workout routine that you guys are doing together or a diet you're doing together. So you have someone with you to hold you accountable and to keep you invested in it. And then I think of just being able to talk about it together. Like, man, that was a really hard workout today. What'd you think of it?
Commiseration. Or no, I meant camaraderie is what I meant, not commiseration. Yes. But no, I think that is an important thing. And it's just, I think that's, some people tend to do better doing their own thing.
Yeah.
But I have seen a lot of people where if that was the one step when they got somebody that wanted the same things that they did and they were working together, played off of each other's positive energy. And then I think for those people, it seems to be a helpful thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So another really important aspect of controlling your environment is not just having positive influences in your life and promoting those, but it's also avoiding negative influences in your life.
Yeah, and I think it goes beyond, I just want to elaborate a little bit beyond just food. Yes, we should control like the food that's in our environment, but people can have a really negative influence on us too. And so take a look at who the 5 people you spend the most time with, you're going to kind of pick up some of their habits. And so if those people don't live a healthy lifestyle, it may influence you in negative ways too.
I'd like you to talk a little bit about the importance of planning ahead, whether that be making a menu for the week, making a workout schedule for the week, or having a game plan before you go into the holidays or go on vacation or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. So helps you to stay on track, Focus on what's within your control, like we talked about. I think of simple things like day to day, or for our week, I meal prep for the week. So I plan out my meals. Or I've heard of people that could be like the same meal each day, which people don't always like, or making a bunch of different things, and you can kind of have different combinations of food. Because if you've worked a long day, you're tired, you're probably going to reach for a not so healthy option,
Right.
I would assume.
Yeah.
Which then makes us feel guilty, for like you've been doing really good with a workout, and then you have this, you skip a workout, or you eat a meal that not the best for you. You might feel guilty about yourself. So planning ahead, and the holiday thing, like if you're going to be away, sometimes I even go to the extent where I pack meals with me, which I don't know, some people may or may not do that. But I know what's going to agree with my body and what's going to make me feel good. And when I feel physically good, emotionally I'm going to feel better.
Okay. Now we've touched on this point several times already, but it's so important. That's why I keep coming back to it. This is the concept of that positive feedback loop. Can you talk a little bit more, just to slam home how important that is? How do people get into it? And how does it help them sustain these healthy lifestyle changes?
Yeah. So we started a while ago. We talked about looking within ourselves and figuring out what motivates us. What do we want to work towards? And so once we figured that out, and we start to implement these healthy routines, once we produce results, there's an end result, and that feels good, and we like it. It's going to cause us, those results are going to in turn cause us to produce more of the behaviors for more of those results to occur. So it's this like loop effect that you're kind of talking about.
Gotcha. And I saw an interesting study on this that I thought was really cool, which is they studied people who started making changes with their nutrition, or started making changes with their physical activity and fitness. And then they also studied groups that did both at the same time. The concern with starting both at the same time being that it would be too much too quickly. But what they actually found is that if you do both at the same time, those people were more successful in achieving their goals. And I can't think of any reason that it would be that way except for that positive feedback.
Right.
Just because you get into it faster and start seeing those results faster and get that feeling that you've been talking about faster. So, interesting study.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Now, another thing that I've heard you mention several times, so it must be important, is the concept of mindfulness. Talk a little bit about mindfulness and how to apply it to these healthier practices.
Yeah, so I implement this into my practice quite a bit. I think mindfulness sounds easy, but it actually is harder than it sounds. So it's being aware in the present moment of our bodily sensations, our emotions, what we feel, just taking it all in a curious but not fixating, stressful type of way, and then like letting it go. So I think of like when people talk about meditating, you see clouds, or I like to think of them as birds go by because my thoughts are faster than clouds. And so you see it, you're curious about it, and then you let it go, which then in turn helps us to, oh my gosh, it helps us in so many different areas of our life, manage stressful situations that arise, because that's going to happen. So yeah, just managing those kinds of situations.
And then more specifically, this concept of mindful eating, because that's been shown to be an effective strategy for achieving goals, for adopting a healthier lifestyle when it comes to their nutrition. So what is mindful eating specifically?
Yeah, so I have training in mindfulness. So when you ask this, it reminds me of my teacher at the time years ago asked me to put a raisin in my mouth and just notice the texture and how it tasted and the smell, and before we put it in, like what it looked like. So being extra mindful. People don't need to take the time to do that. But I think of just some key things with mindfulness is sitting to eat your food. Make sure you're sitting. How many of us are guilty of eating on the go, eating while multitasking, eating while working? I used to eat in my car all the time, or stand and eat while I was doing like something else. So this, I want to talk a little bit about the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic.
I don't know. That had a lot of syllables. No, go ahead. I'm just kidding.
So when we sit, when we choose to maybe take a breath or a couple breaths before we eat, we can start to access our parasympathetic nervous system, which is more of our rest and digest. It's going to help our bodies to receive the food, and what we do with the food in sympathetic versus parasympathetic is going to be much different. Sympathetic is more of like our response to stress. So it's not bad. That helps us in stressful situations.
It's necessary.
Right. Yeah. It just, you're more likely to store food in that sort of stage in the sympathetic. So the sitting, being mindful, taking time to really taste your food, enjoy it, not doing other things are going to be huge to set you up.
Yes, and stress is something that everybody deals with, and certainly has a negative impact on people's lives. How important is it, specifically for making these healthy lifestyle changes, to reduce the stress?
Yeah, so we all have stress, and having some sort of stress isn't a bad thing. Too much stress and not managing our stress levels becomes a negative thing. So when we're stressed, I think of things that you probably see. We can become moody or irritable. We reach for something maybe sugar, carb heavy. We don't make better, thoughtful choices. And I kind of want to elaborate a little here on sleep, because I see stress and sleep intermesh so much. And so I go into this because usually when we're highly stressed, it affects our sleep, because usually cortisol levels are higher, like the stress hormone, and then we can't produce enough melatonin, which is why people say, I can't sleep, I'm stressed, I have all this on my mind. And then sleep interferes with everything, which is going to make us crave heavier carb things. We're not going to feel like cooking. We're going to be tired. We're going to be irritable. It's going to affect everything. So I elaborate a little bit on sleep because I think when we're high stress and we don't manage our stress, it affects our sleep, which manages everything else. And it's this nasty
Sounds
cycle.
a little bit more like a negative feedback loop instead of a positive one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, poor sleep is definitely a major factor.
Yeah.
So what about tracking progress? You see these apps like MyFitnessPal, for example. There's a handful of those that are very popular. Do you see that as a positive thing? And if so, why?
Yeah, for sure. Because it's positive. If we see our progress, that feels good, right? So we're going to continue to do what feels good for us. I also think of sometimes when we're in a fitness or program or some sort of lifestyle of eating that feels really good for us. I hate to call it a diet because I think it should be a lifestyle. So those things are long-term changes, which usually are slow progress, slow changes, which isn't a bad thing, but we don't always see that progress. So tracking it helps us to see, yeah, I have come a long way. And I didn't even realize that. I couldn't maybe see it.
This reminds me sort of like if you haven't seen a young nephew or something for a couple of years, and then when you do see them, you expect them to still be a 4-year-old, and then they've grown up into the 6-year-old. And when you track your fitness goals like that, you can, you don't see the incremental changes as much as if you look back and say, oh, this is where I started. Hey, I actually have done pretty good,
Right.
Gives you a boost of confidence and keeps you motivated to keep going.
Yeah, for sure.
So what kind of practices would you recommend to people to help them reduce their stress?
So it's figuring out what works for you. I think of stress management, and then I think of things that are soothing and feel good for you. I'm going to group those two different categories. And so stress management could really be anything. It could be talking to people, exercise, any type of exercising, walking, running, biking. Could be things like art or kind of that creativity outlet. It could be a bath or something like that. So there's lots of different stress management strategies out there. And then there's the self-soothing things, which are so simple and easy, but they just feel good for us. Like for me, it's when I take a hot shower, I put on a big pair of fuzzy socks, and it feels so cozy and soothing. So anything like that, your favorite sweatpants, lighting a candle, looking at some awesome scenery, and just kind of taking it in.
Okay, Rachel. So tell me about some of the simplest, most basic stress-reducing techniques that you know of.
Yeah, so the first one that comes to mind is deep breathing. And so sounds really simple, but most people throughout the chaos of life and the stress of running from work to picking up the kids to doing your chores, it's shallow breath, which is not, it's not relaxing. It's not calming. When we talk about the sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system, the shallow breath is not going to allow us to access our parasympathetic nervous system. So deep breaths, and how I kind of structure this, basic, simple. I just start with taking a really deep breath in, filling the lungs all the way up, holding it for a few seconds, and then letting it out slowly through your mouth. So I start with something simple like that. Although there are, like, you can add in counts, there's some different strategies with that. But I think just implementing that, meditation and breathing, can go a long way. Can I add like another quick thing
Please
that
do,
I would?
yes.
And so I think of like that helps us to calm down. Some people I see have really high anxiety and they're like, I can't take deep breaths. And, some people might resonate with that. So when we have anxiety, I think of it as like this energy, this charge kind of running through our bodies. Usually people can identify it as my heart's beating, I feel hot, I'm sweaty, something. So sometimes it needs to be more of letting out in some sort of physical activity, letting out that energy. I just talked about this the other day. It could be like going for a run, walking, a bike ride, or something even like punching a punching bag. Not all of us have that, but somebody wanted to do squat jumps, like higher energy, just to get rid of that energy. So
I've got to
something
interject
easy.
here. So when you're punching your punching bag, are you one of these people that puts a specific face on your punching bag before you let it have it?
No.
Okay.
Although I might
Okay,
have it
I
in my
figured.
mind, but
Oh, okay. Just mental picture on the punching
Yeah.
bag. Gotcha. Okay. Well, everybody's got to have that extra motivation, right?
Yeah.
So, are there any other types of routines that are simple that you see that really help people on a regular basis?
Yeah, for sure. So, like I said at the very beginning, I have people walk me through what day-to-day life looks like for them. So morning and evening routines, I really try to focus on. And so how are you waking up? Like I said, are you checking work emails? Are you doing something really stressful? Or are you slowly waking up? Is it more mindful, taking breaths, people like to meditate in the morning, or is it just you're sitting, you're drinking your cup of coffee or tea and you're eating breakfast and that's all you're doing. And that could be enough. So I think of morning routine and then evening routine. How do you wind down? Is it, again, are you on your computer, your phone doing work? I like to think of it as like you're driving a car full speed, and do you just like full speed pull into the parking lot, or do you like slow down and ease in and park, right? Like some of us can't fall asleep when we're really stressed, which like we've already talked about is kind of that negative feedback loop, if you will.
Got to stop and smell the roses every now and then. I actually like parking a ways away from the entrance of the store, for example, just because I like the extra time, just to walk in.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just me. Okay, well, I've got one last thing that I'd like to talk to you about, and I say this for last because I think this might overall be the most important factor when it comes to helping people succeed, and that is you have to find out what it is that works for you as an individual, because we have mentioned this already. What works for someone else will not necessarily work for you. Talk a little bit about that, and how do you find what does work for you?
Yeah. So I just, I want to give some pointers, quick things that come to mind so people can kind of take away these quick things. So don't be afraid to try things. Just try, experiment, figure out what feels good for you, figure out what you like, figure out what's helping you create these healthy rhythms and routines. So try things and figure out what works best for you. Another thing is don't be hard on yourself. I've mentioned before the self-compassion and grace. That is so healing when I work with any type of person. The more you beat yourself up, does not lead to any sort of positive results. So just like have grace with yourself. When we're humans, we make a mistake. It happens, acknowledge it, and you get back on track. And I also like to think just enjoy it too. It's our lives. And so I really think we should be doing at least one thing per day that we enjoy and make this health journey enjoyable for us. So that's going to be maintainable too.
This is our lives, and we only get one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's so important not to starve yourself on a diet or anything like that, because then you're missing what really makes life great.
Yeah.
And really when you do make healthy lifestyle changes, it's about making your life better. It's not about, oh, I really should be this, I really should be that. It's how do I make this wonderful journey that we're all on even better?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, we didn't talk too much about it, but treating yourself every once in a while is
Oh, yeah.
huge. It's going to keep you going. And
Treat yourself. Do you ever watch that show?
Yeah.
Parks and Rec. Oh, it's a great show. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a big piece of it. I just believe we should enjoy this life for what it is. If we're creating these healthy lifestyles with exercise and diet and like mental and emotional health, it should be enjoyable. We should like what we're doing.
Fantastic. Well, I think that is a perfect place to end for today. I thank you so much for coming and talking with me about this important topic. I learned a lot. I hope that you did too. Rachel Finch, licensed professional counselor for ThriveWorks. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I hope you come back again.
Thanks for having me.
All right.